CBS Sports NFL Insider, CBSSports.com. NFL Today, he's on Tops as well, and he's all over at Jason La Canfora. JLC, what's happening, buddy? How are you?
What's going on, guys?
All is good, man.
All right, man. What's up?
You heard what we were talking about. Jay Cutler's back in the under center, man. What's that going to mean, if anything?
I'm not going to vouch for that guy at this stage. I mean, he probably
That's the
needs a
answer we
couple
knew
of
we'd
turnovers, a couple of great throws, a few highlight plays, and then the Bears ultimately losing. I mean, that would be my hunch. I mean, he's coming back against a pretty good defense, and I mean, I think you need to just the larger reality here is if Hoyer doesn't break his arm. Cutler probably could have played a week or two ago. Nobody was really in a big hurry to look at his thumb because they were waiting. They were kind of waiting to see, is Hoyer going to keep this up? I mean, he had 4 straight 300-yard games. He was playing pretty well in the game he got hurt in, and then now he's out at least 6 weeks after surgery. So this was a decision that was made for John Fox. But if Hoyer kept doing what he was doing, this guy would have been holding a clipboard with a good thumb, a bad thumb, or a mediocre thumb.
Yeah, and then the next thing, the thumb's going to be in the air to get a taxi and leave Chicago because he's not going to be back next year.
No, they've I was going to say they survived the guarantee portion of his contract.
Yeah.
I mean, they're on route to a 1-win season. How many did they win last year? 4. So survive probably isn't the right verb, but yeah, I don't think there's any way that he will be fulfilling the remainder of that contract in Chicago. I'm sure they will try to trade him. I can't imagine that would yield them much. And then if ultimately they just release him, then they just release him.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that because Tiki and I were discussing this before the show, and Santa, our producer, as well, and trying to come up with plausible landing spots. Now, forget about what you might get back for Jay. We'll leave that discussion because I think you're right. It's not going to be much for a different day, or he might just get cut. But in terms of possible destinations, obviously the arm talent's terrific. It's really good. But, I guess just deflating the optimism in a quarterback room. So if you're the Browns and you have the first overall pick and you take Deshaun Watson or Kaiser, do you really want one of those guys around Jay? Who would even want him next year?
Yeah, I mean, without seeing which coaches land where, you know what I mean, who gets jobs, who gets fired, it's very difficult to say which front offices get shaken up. I mean, the kid from Notre Dame, I hear more and more about him maybe staying in school. So the senior quarterback class, I don't hear anything good about. And even the juniors, there's reservations about the Clemson kid, and he hasn't exactly looked better each week. And I just had an item midweek. I talked to a bunch of evaluators this week, guys who don't need a quarterback, and they're like, if you're taking a quarterback in the first half of the first round this year, it's because you're convincing yourself you need to take a quarterback in the first half of the first round.
Yeah, but Jay, I hear you. But that doesn't mean that those scouts are right. Think about how many times they're wrong.
No, nobody's right all the time. But the idea, like a team like the Browns, that we're going to take 14 picks last year, and we'll draft Kessler in the 3rd round, but like none of these quarterbacks are good. None of these other quarterbacks are good enough because next year we'll be all right with these juniors and seniors coming out. You know what I mean? It's very hard to get one draft right in real time. Not much less getting 2 right in real time. One of which isn't going to happen for another calendar year.
It's an interesting way to look at it.
I mean, with all those variables. Will somebody, need Cutler? Like, who ends up in San Francisco? You know what I mean? But are they picking first overall? Do they think picking first overall is too high to take one of these quarterbacks?
What about Miami, if they decide not to bring back Tannehill?
I would think, that could be interesting if you get him on enough of a Band-Aid contract where you're drafting the next guy, but you're using him as a bridge quarterback cheap enough. Look, Adam did really good stuff with Jay Cutler, and if nothing else, cut down the turnovers and just, he wasn't a guy who was hanging his defense out to dry anymore. They're running the heck out of the football there. Yeah, I mean, that's one where you could connect some dots. But I can tell you this, he's all in on Tannehill for now. Like, he's nowhere close to being anywhere near saying quarterback's an issue for us.
I got you.
That's not in his thinking at all. Now, let's see where it is come January.
Bingo.
I can see that, though, with the offensive line playing better and him not getting tossed around a little bit. Speaking of quarterbacks, Teddy Bridgewater, there's some reports coming out of Minnesota that he might not play again. Should we believe those?
I don't think you can rule it out at this point. I mean, the reality is there's not enough information right now to set a target date. It could be a situation where he's back in 14, 15 months from the injury. It could be a situation where, for the long-term future and discretion being the better part of valor, they call next year a wash, but think we could get him ready for 2018. And then, yeah, I mean, the sort of dark side of the moon, the direst of dire projections would be he doesn't make it all the way back from this. It was a very, very significant, gruesome, grisly injury. I mean, Tiki, you running around the game a long time. Like, how many times have you ever seen a guy have a non-contact injury in a practice?
Yeah.
The whole building shuts down. Guys are crying on the sidelines.
Never.
The kid's in distress. An ambulance comes to the field, rushes him to the hospital, and the building shuts down for the rest of the day.
And they called his mom, which never happens in the NFL. Maybe high school, not in the NFL.
Never heard of that situation happening. Other than, the only situation was Corey Stringer. But that was,
I mean, God forbid. Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, somebody dies.
Yes.
I mean, or somebody, you know what I mean? Somebody suffers a cataclysmic blow to the head, and they're, you know what I mean? You think they may have severed their spine. I mean, but for a situation, I never. I mean, immediately it's like, whoa,
sad.
That's far from the norm.
Yeah, very sad. We all like Teddy, good kid. So to Jason La Canfora, CBS Sports NFL Insider, NFL Today, top CBSSports.com. You know, we should all be so lucky to have such a tolerant boss like Gus Bradley does. Listen, man, I'm not in the business of getting, unless it's a bad guy, and then I have no problem saying fire somebody. But if they're a good man or a good woman, I don't take any joy in saying somebody should lose their job. But you're 14-41. It was a complete non-effort, a complete no-show on national TV. What is Con waiting for with Gus Bradley? What's the story in Jacksonville?
This is the first coach that he picked, and well, I guess he had Malarkey for a year, but that whole thing was kind of crazy. He's stubborn, blind loyalty, refusing to admit you are who your record says you are. I mean, there's not a whole lot else to say about it other than, I mean, any empirical evidence that you would look at to analyze this situation would tell you need to make a change. You're in the worst division in football, and you still can't compete. You've had all 3 years. I don't think they've ever won more than 2 games in the first half of a season. So that remains a big issue. The quarterback's regressing. All the young quote-unquote talent and all the speed you have amassed on defense, you're as bad as you've ever been. Now the receivers that you've had, some of whom, and Robinson, you've actually started to pay big money to now, are basically rendered non-factors. I mean, look, when are you going to admit defeat on the? Like, at some point, like, do you just keep playing this quarterback? Like, or do you sit him for a week or two and see what the other guy can do and think maybe he gets his head and his body and his mechanics and everything back in order? If he sees that, this isn't guaranteed. I mean, it goes beyond Gus Bradley for them.
JLC, could you really bench Blake Bortles? I mean,
are you trying? Like, I would have benched him for that game, coming off what I've seen to this point, and said, look, if I'm Gus Bradley and I'm fighting for my job, I mean, maybe Henne gives us a spark in the first quarter. Maybe he completes a ball downfield. Maybe he's a little more accurate. Maybe his mechanics and his fundamentals and his footworks and the way he's reading things is a little more sound. I mean, it's desperate times. I mean, not only do they lose, then they go out and not only lose that game, they get absolutely hammered. They're way off any sort of path to even win that horrible division. I would have made the move now, and I think Gus is a great guy, and I think he'll have a long future as a defensive coordinator, and maybe he'll be a head coach again. But 14-41 when you're playing, 6 of every 16 games in that horrible division.
It's deplorable.
And you're 14-41.
It's deplorable.
And your offense stinks and your defense stinks. I don't know what you hang your hat on.
Nothing.
I mean, but Shad Khan is stuck in on this thing. Look, he gave these guys extensions last year. I mean, they were nominal extensions. They were 1-year extensions.
Yep.
But he did that last year when he didn't have to. The smart move for him, unfortunately, would be to make this move, to let Doug Marrone, whomever be the interim, and then to get ahead of the curve and start researching every coach you can think of and start giving a guy like Josh McDaniels, start putting together prospectus to where you're going to get some A-list guy to come there. Because it's a tough sell. People are not sold on Bortles. They like some of the defensive talent. But in an average year, there's 6 to 8 jobs out there. Andrew Luck could be looking for a new head coach. I mean, if Tennessee falls apart, Marcus Mariota could be looking for a new head coach. Matt Stafford might be the MVP of the league. If that team doesn't make the playoffs, Matt Stafford might be looking for a new head coach.
I wouldn't mind,
People are going to go there before they go to Jacksonville.
Yeah,
I got news for you.
I wouldn't mind the Jets looking for a
new
new
head coach. And
head
the other
coach.
little thing there, too, is, and I talked to 2 GMs about this last night, just shooting the bull watching that game. Like, if you think that team's going, if you think you're a legitimate NFL head coach, and you can have your pick of the litter, and you have any concerns whatsoever that Jacksonville's moving to London in 4 or 5 years,
I hear you, Jay.
that might take you right out of the equation right there.
Yeah.
No matter
This
what
guy
they
is
tell
on.
you,
Look at this guy. You're on fire, locking for. We got to go, man. You aired it out, boo. You just dropped a million words on us. That was phenomenal. That was
We're
absolutely.
done? All right.
No, thank you, Jay.
Be good, Jay.
We appreciate it, and he's going to keep going. That guy was good. Man, he's right. I mean, the Jaguars. How about Coughlin? Call him.